Hello, I'm Dini, your coach, helping you delivering a day-to-day provoking questions to become a better you. You learn, you grow, start from today. In this channel, I will read out loud the conversation between me and AI, a list of curated questions dedicated for those who are interested in organizational development, HR, and neuroscience. AI is a scholarly partner for you to have through discussions as long as you already read, understand, and practice the subjects. This will be conducted in English, not in Bahasa. I hope you could learn something from each chapter or each question I have and benefit from it. A delightful conversation with scholarly AI. Bonus chapter: Corruption in Indonesia. Part 1. Questions. 1. What factors Indonesian corruption rates so high? What's the cultural, social, education, and political reason? Please explain. 2. When the latest CPI survey? Mention top 10 countries and bottom 10 countries, please. 3. What about the opacity index? Can you explain the difference between the CPI and opacity index? 4. How does the opacity index differ from the CPI? 1. What factors Indonesian corruption rates so high? What's the cultural, social, education, and political reason? Please explain. Indonesia's high corruption rate is influenced by a complex interplay of cultural, social, educational, and political factors. Here's an analysis. Cultural factors. 1. Patronage and nepotism. Indonesian culture values family ties and patronage, which can lead to favoritism and cronyism. 2. Gift-giving culture. Traditional practices like amplop or envelope culture, where money is given as gifts, can blur lines between bribery and generosity. 3. Hierarchical society. Indonesia's collectivist culture emphasizes respect for authority, making it difficult for lower-ranking officials to question or report corrupt superiors. Social factors. 1. Poverty and economic inequality. Limited economic opportunities and widespread poverty create an environment where corruption becomes a means of survival. 2. Lack of transparency and accountability. Insufficient whistleblower protection and limited access to information facilitate corrupt practices. 3. Social norms. Corruption is often normalized, with many viewing it as an acceptable way to get things done. Educational factors. 1. Limited civic education. Insufficient emphasis on ethics, civic responsibility, and anti-corruption education contributes to a lack of awareness. 2. Inadequate professional training. Poor training and low salaries for public officials make them vulnerable to corruption. 3. University corruption. Corruption within educational institutions undermines the integrity of future leaders. Political factors. 1. Weak institutions and enforcement. Inadequate laws, poor law enforcement, and lenient sentencing allow corruption to persist. 2. Decentralization and fragmentation. Indonesia's decentralized governance structure creates opportunities for corruption at local levels. 3. Politics and business ties. Close relationships between politicians, businessmen, and bureaucrats facilitate corrupt deals. 4. Lack of independent oversight bodies. Insufficient checks and balances enable corrupt practices. Additional factors. 1. Historical legacy. Indonesia's colonial and authoritarian past has contributed to entrenched corrupt practices. 2. Bureaucratic complexity. Overly complex regulations and procedures create opportunities for corruption. 3. Technology and digitalization. Rapid technological advancements have introduced new avenues for corruption. Addressing Indonesia's corruption requires a multifaceted approach. 1. Strengthening institutions and enforcement mechanisms. 2. Enhancing transparency, accountability, and civic education. 3. Promoting ethical leadership and cultural change. 4. Improving economic opportunities and reducing inequality. 5. Encouraging whistleblower protection and citizen participation. Sources. 1. Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index. 2. World Bank's Worldwide Governance Indicators. 3. Indonesia's Corruption Eradication Commission or KPK. 4. Academic Research and Analysis. 2. When the latest CPI survey. Mention top 10 countries and bottom 10 countries, please. The latest Corruption Perception Index or CPI survey available from 2023. Here are the top 10 and bottom 10 countries. Top 10 countries. 1. Denmark. 2. Finland. 3. New Zealand. 4. Norway. 5. Singapore. 6. Sweden. 7. Switzerland. 8. Netherlands. 9. Germany. 10. Australia. Bottom 10 countries. 1. Somalia. 2. Venezuela. 3. Syria. 4. South Sudan. 5. Yemen. 6. Sudan. 7. Afghanistan. 8. North Korea. 9. Libya. 10. Iraq. These rankings are based on perceived levels of corruption in the public sector, with scores ranging from 0 or highly corrupt to 100 or very clean. 3. What about the opacity index? Can you explain the difference between the CPI and opacity index? The opacity index is a measure of the lack of transparency and accountability in a country's business and financial environment. It was developed by the risk analyst firm PricewaterhouseCoopers or PwC in collaboration with the research firm IMR. What does the opacity index measure? The opacity index assesses the level of transparency and accountability in a country's business environment based on 5 key factors. 1. Corruption, the prevalence of corruption and bribery in business transactions. 2. Legal and regulatory framework, the clarity, consistency, and effectiveness of a country's law and regulations. 3. Economic and financial transparency, the availability and reliability of economic and financial data. 4. Accounting and auditing practices, the quality and consistency of accounting and auditing standards. 5. Corporate governance, the effectiveness of corporate governance practices, including board composition, executive compensation, and shareholder rights. 4. How does the opacity index differ from the CPI? While both indices aim to assess corruption and transparency, there are key differences. 1. Scope. The CPI focuses on corruption in the public sector, while the opacity index examines the broader business environment, including private sector corruption. 2. Methodology. The CPI is based on surveys and expert opinions, whereas the opacity index uses a combination of surveys, data analysis, and expert assessments. 3. Factors assessed. The CPI primarily assesses corruption perceptions, whereas the opacity index evaluates a broader range of factors, including legal and regulatory frameworks, economic transparency, and corporate governance. 4. Scoring. The CPI scores countries on a scale of 0 to 100, while the opacity index scores countries on a scale of 0 to 100, with lower scores indicating higher opacity. In example, lower transparency. Latest opacity index ranking. Unfortunately, the opacity index is no longer published regularly, and the latest available rankings are from 2005. However, the index remains a useful tool for understanding the complexities of corruption and transparency in the business environment. Keep in mind that while both indices provide valuable insights, they have different focuses and methodologies. By considering both the CPI and opacity index, you can gain more comprehensive understanding of corruption and transparency in a given country or region. This is the end of bonus chapter, Corruption in Indonesia. Thank you so much for listening. Could I ask you for a favor? Please like, comment, share, and subscribe this channel. For inquiries, please contact my Instagram, DiniDaily_coaching. And please support our online store at 4teeth.